IMF and 10 countries were simulating a cyber attack on a global financial system. Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And today, just a quick video about a story that was published back on December 9th, but a few other folks have been noticing, including Zero Hedge and Clif High. And it's something I'd been thinking about and had been meaning to make a video about just to pass along because it's a bit bizarre and I'll leave for you to decide what to think. But there was an exclusive that the IMF and 10 countries were simulating a cyber attack on a global financial system. Now, on one hand, I guess, it sounds good to be prepared for things. On the other hand, given that our financial system is so fragile and seems to be imploding by the hour now between the hyperinflation. Obviously, I've talked plenty on this channel about the fragility in the silver market. So when I saw this, it did seem rather odd. Israel on this Thursday, which was about 2 weeks ago, led a 10-country simulation on a major cyber attack on the global financial system in an attempt to increase cooperation that could help minimize any potential damage to the financial market and banks. Simulated war game called it, and planned over the past year. That's interesting. So not just recent thing, but it evolved over 10 days with sensitive data emerging on the dark web, which is interesting because I know Clif High is the only one I know that actually regularly is able to access some of that, which he reports on regularly. And his comment when he saw the Zero Hedge story today was they must plan. They know that their silver vulnerability is to be discovered and exploited. And I think that's been happening ever since the Silver Squeeze weekend back in February. And as we'll get to in a moment, there was a story on Zero Hedge here today. Simulation, likely caused by what officials called sophisticated players, featured several attacks that impacted global foreign exchange, bond markets, liquidity, integrity of data. These events are creating havoc in the financial markets, said a narrator of a film shown to the participants as part of the simulation and seen by Reuters. This sounds a lot like what was on the agenda 201 or 21, that thing where Bill Gates and some of his buddies were simulating coronavirus attacks back in the fall of 2019. And at least sharing my opinion here, I understand a sensitive topic, but sure is increasingly looking to me like a lot of this was, the whole COVID thing was planned well in advance. And you're starting to see some people are making a lot of money off of it, which just similar footprints, shall we say. And attackers are always 10 steps ahead. Narrator of the film said in the simulation, governments were under pressure to clarify the impact of the attack. The banks are appealing for emergency liquidity assistance in a multitude of currencies to put a halt to the chaos as counterparties withdraw their funds and limit access to liquidity, leaving the banks in disarray and ruin, the narrator said. This is also very similar if you watched the movie Contagion from 2011.
Homeland Security wants to know if we could put a vaccination in the water supply, like fluoride, cure everyone all at once.
And the thing from the Bill Gates coronavirus simulations. I actually did see the video there where you saw they had mock simulations of financial panics.
Financial markets have tumbled, with all down significantly for the year. Economic disruptions are being felt across the globe.
Thank you, Dr. Rivers. So now let's look at this recent exchange on GNN that focused on the economic and financial crises that are rippling around the world.
Just a quick note there, that cough, that wasn't me. They actually threw that in too.
The response to the CAPS pandemic is now the most expensive international emergency ever. Political leaders around the globe are faced with many impossible dilemmas, including financial. First up is economist Dave Gamble. Are we out of money?
The best way to answer that is no, we are not out of money. Yet. But the fact is we are trending in a dangerous direction and something needs to change.
You have been quite vocal about that and generated some controversy along the way.
Well, look, you know me. I try to avoid controversy.
Seriously, Bill? Is this really what you're doing in your retirement?
But come on, common sense says it shouldn't be controversial to suggest our response should prioritize both lives and livelihoods. Absolutely, we need to save lives. We all know someone who's been affected by caps. But we literally cannot afford a heavy-handed response that suffocates our economy. Pragmatism is a wise choice. I mean, what exactly are the risks and benefits of slowing air travel, of staying home from work, closing schools, disrupting supply chains,
Keep in mind, this video was posted on November 4th, 2019.
interfering with our reliable channels of communication and news?
I reckon, assuming that doesn't include anything out of the mainstream media or from Anthony Fauci?
Sure, some of these steps can help slow caps, but often only marginally and with serious costs. When this is all over, some families, some cities will have suffered more from our interventions than from caps.
Make you feel like somebody knew some of these things were coming?
Our response should aim to protect every life we can.
Of course it should be. But let's be frank, letting the global economy slow to a halt puts lives at risk.
Yes, but there does need to be a balance.
Okay, you both agree balance is paramount. Theoretically, that's an easy choice. But leaders are now faced with very real and very tough decisions. Just last week, traditional sources for emergency funding had exceeded their limits. As new mechanisms are being discussed, there is consideration as whether funds should primarily support health emergency response or prop up economies.
Precisely. And we do need these funds sooner rather than later. Funding shortfalls are putting lives at risk and extending this devastating crisis.
Again, we seem to agree.
And then look at what you saw a couple months later when COVID began or escalated and stock markets crashed. Gold and silver prices crashed. The Fed printed a lot of money, and we found out later the Fed governors front ran their own policy. Here is the zero hedge coverage. Earlier this month, Reuters produced a report which didn't receive nearly enough attention among the American public. I agree. So I'm rectifying, at least doing my part today. The contents would be sure to alarm people. And I mean, in the end, you know, you have Joe Biden acting as president. You have Jerome Powell, who's already been caught front running with his friends. At least I don't feel comfortable with my money handing it to this government or these banks. And they're telling you what's going to happen. Recent pandemic-induced supply chain disruptions. Powerful nations and banking institutions decided to get together to run a global economic collapse scenario. Similar to how NORAD was running simulations of a plane flying into a building up until and including morning of September 11th. So what to make of it, you know, I don't want to insinuate. I'm just saying it doesn't sound good. It doesn't make me feel comfortable. Further, the report detailed of the simulation hosted under the Israeli Finance Ministry, as we saw banks appealing for emergency liquidity. Participants discussed multilateral policies to respond to the crisis, including a coordinated bank holiday, debt repayment grace periods, swap repo agreements, and coordinated delinking from major currencies. Well, we already saw the swap repo agreements. Those have been going on for the last 2 years. And it was interesting because also recently you saw SEC floats rules to shore up money markets, curb insider trading. So this is the same economy that Jerome Powell and Joe Biden say is rock solid. Now here's Gary Gensler, who presided over the CFTC and said there was no evidence of silver manipulation. And later, the CFTC fined JP Morgan $920 million for manipulating the market on hundreds of thousands of occasions during the period where Gary found nothing. But that aside, in addition to fighting climate change, the new boogeyman created so you can regulate it, sell a problem so you can sell the solution. New rules for money market funds, mutual funds aim to prevent episodes that occurred during the past two recessions, 2008 and 2020, when the Fed was forced to backstop the funds after they were hit with a wave of redemption requests that caused credit markets to seize up. which I guess could be somewhat true yet. What if, similar to the housing crisis, where the banks caused the problem, the Fed caused the problem by printing too much money? So it's certainly a gray area when bankers like Jerome Powell, who have already been caught front running their own policy, are still given the ability, whether they're intentionally doing it or whether their policy is just reckless, to cause these kind of disasters, trade in front of it. And then you see from the SEC's own site, there's Gary, and he's saying, to put it simply, there was a bit of a dash for cash. Prime and tax-exempt money market funds, particularly institutional funds, experienced large outflows. These are from the guys that are supposedly fixing it, but they're not new. Gary Gensler's not new. The Fed's not new. These same people have been doing this over and over again, hoping that you don't notice the pattern. They come and smash your knee, and then appears the saint who's offering to sell you the crutch. It's not an accident. This is their playbook. It's their only play, and when you spot it, then you can start seeing these things a lot more easily. And then sure enough, it'll make more sense of why you see the IMF simulating a cyber attack on the global financial system. Nice of them to share the video with Reuters. I didn't get a copy yet, but we'll see how that goes. And with that said, we'll wrap up there. Not sure exactly what to make of it. Doesn't have a good feel to it, but just thought it was worthy of pointing out and that people should be aware of it. So if you did enjoy this, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. A lot going on in the financial markets, and I will be keeping you posted here at Arcadia Economics. See you again soon.